A 21-year-old young man spent the previous day laboring and sweating under the blazing sun on the Lus Plateau in northern Shaanxi. But the next day, he was told that he would never stand up again for the rest of his life. Fate kicked him into a wheelchair, thrusting him into endless darkness. He couldn't find a job, couldn't see a future. Every day, he shut himself in a room, staring blankly at the walls, with one thought circling in his mind over and over: should I end my life? During those most hopeless days, he wheeled himself into an ancient garden near his home, a garden abandoned for more than 400 years. It was overgrown with weeds, the walls were crumbling, the buildings had collapsed, everywhere was filled with the air of neglect. But it was this seemingly barren and desolate garden that saved his life. He spent 15 years there. He stopped under every old tree, left traces of his wheelchair on almost every meter of grass. 15 years later, he wrote an essay collection that brought tears to the eyes of countless readers in China. This man's name is Shi Taishan, and the work is titled I and the Temple of Earth. Today, we're not just going to talk about the story of how a disabled man made peace with his fate. I want to invite you to step into that ancient garden together, to discover the vitality hidden amidst the desolation, to hear what a person who spent 38 years in a wheelchair has come to understand about life, death, motherly love, and destiny. I'm Sunshine, and welcome to today's episode of Delusion. To understand I and the Temple of Earth, you first need to know what the Temple of Earth is. The Temple of Earth, formerly known as Fangzi Temple, was built during the Jiajing era of the Ming dynasty as a site for emperors to worship the gods of the earth. For centuries later, by the time Shi Taishan visited, it was no longer a sacred place. It had become an overgrown, forgotten garden in Beijing. The walls had crumbled, the glazed tiles lay shattered, and wild grass and vines grew unchecked under the old cypress trees. Hardly anyone visited, just a few elderly folks taking walks, a couple or two secretly meeting, a young man practicing his singing, and a man catching birds. Shi Taishan was the most frequent resident of this abandoned garden. In 1972, he returned to Beijing from a rural work assignment in northern Shaanxi. By then, his legs were permanently paralyzed. He was only 21 years old. In those days, there was no such thing as psychological counseling or barrier-free facilities. A young man suddenly confined to a wheelchair was faced with a complete collapse of his world. He couldn't find a job and saw no path forward. In his own words, everything seemed lost to him in an instant. So he wheeled himself repeatedly into the Temple of Earth to escape. Yet something miraculous happened. Instead of deepening his despair, this abandoned ancient garden began to heal him, bit by bit. He noticed bees hovering midair, buzzing back and forth, their transparent wings gleaming under the sunlight. He saw ants crawling on a stone slab, bobbing their heads as if pondering some philosophical question. He saw a ladybug climb to the tip of a blade of grass and suddenly take flight. These humble, small creatures, unnoticed by anyone, lived seriously and vibrantly nonetheless. Shi Taishan felt a sudden stir in his heart. He realized that the garden was abandoned but not decayed. Walls could collapse, tiles could shatter, but the grass still grew, the insects still crawled, and the wind still blew. Life did not stop functioning just because it was ignored, nor did it lose its value because it was imperfect. But the most heart-wrenching part of this book is not his reflections on his fate, but his memories of his mother. After Shi Taishan's paralysis, his mother endured tremendous pain. She did not dare comfort him excessively, fearing it would hurt his self-esteem. Instead, when he wheeled himself out of the house, she followed him quietly, watching until he entered the Temple of Earth's gates, then stood outside for an unknown amount of time. Sometimes, when he stayed in the garden too long, she would wander inside to search for him. Imagine a large garden, a middle-aged woman anxiously searching everywhere for her son in a wheelchair, her heart awash with worry and fear. Yet, during those years, the young Shi Taishan was completely immersed in his own suffering and never considered his mother's feelings. It wasn't until she died of liver disease at the age of 49 that he suddenly woke up to the truth. The garden wasn't just filled with his wheelchair tracks. Wherever his tracks were, there were also his mother's footprints. He finally understood what his mother had endured all those years. Seeing her son destroyed by fate, her own heart broke inch by inch. She left him with no lofty declarations or dying instructions, but her struggles with fate, tenacious spirit, and quiet love, like the silent growth of grass and trees in the temple of earth, became deeper and more profound precisely because they were wordless. After discussing the story of this book, I want to delve into 3 topics that I find particularly worth pondering. These are also the 3 realizations Shi Taishang arrived at over 15 years in that garden. The first topic is about life and death. After his paralysis at 21, Shi Taishang grappled daily with one question: should I end my life? This question tormented him for many years. But as he spent more time in the temple of earth, he gradually came to understand a fundamental truth. He said, the fact that one is born is not a question of debate, but a fact handed down by God. You see, birth isn't a choice, just as you can't choose your height or appearance, it's an unchangeable fact. And since death is also inevitable, why hurry? Death is not something to rush toward. Death is an inevitable holiday that will surely arrive. When you first read this, it may feel cold, even darkly humorous. But if you ponder it carefully, he's really saying, if death is certain, why rush? You'll reach the final stop eventually. The question isn't when you'll die, but how you plan to spend the journey before reaching that endpoint. As he later expressed, a person who aims solely to make the journey extraordinary cannot be deprived of it. The power of this statement lies in how shifting your focus from the result to the process takes away fate's control over you. Your legs can be taken away, your health and wealth stripped, but no one can take away your experience of the journey. In 1998, Shi Taishang developed uremia and had to undergo dialysis every other day. He humorously remarked, "My profession is being sick, writing is my hobby." Yet, even as fate repeatedly crushed his body, he wrote some of the most tender and profound works in contemporary Chinese literature while lying on a hospital bed, sitting in a wheelchair, or enduring dialysis sessions. His writings, such as Notes from a Sickness Gap, Virtual Writings, and Life Like Strings on a Zither, prove the truth of his words. The process can be extraordinary, even if the ending is already determined. The second topic centers on maternal love and understanding. Earlier, I mentioned how Shi Taishang's guilt towards his mother is the most moving part of this book. But let's go deeper. Why do we often only learn to understand after loss? As a young man, Shi Taishang had a terrible temper. He wrote about how, at that time, he was so absorbed in his own misery that he ignored his mother's concern and even found it bothersome. Every time she sent him off, she'd say, "Go out for a walk, visit the temple of earth, read a book, I think it's a good idea." She wanted him to feel that going there was normal and beneficial, not an act of escape. She chose her words so cautiously, afraid that one wrong phrase might touch his wound. But young Shi Taishang had no clue how much anxiety and heartache lay behind her careful choice of words. Only after his mother passed away did he feel as though he'd been struck awake. He began to replay in his mind scenes of her life, standing at the door, watching the back of his wheelchair fade into the distance, anxiously pacing through the garden to find him, returning home to wait helplessly for his return. In the book, he wrote a line that has brought countless people to tears. For the first time in many years, I realized that the garden wasn't just full of my wheelchair tracks. Where my tracks were, there were also my mother's footprints. His tracks were marks left by his wheelchair. Her footprints were proof she had followed behind. One moved forward in darkness, the other swallowed her worry in silence as she followed. This isn't just Shi Taishang's story. Think about it, how many of us share a similar dynamic with our parents? Their kindness often goes unnoticed by us in the moment. We get annoyed by their nagging, take their concern for granted, and believe they don't understand us. But someday, when they've grown old or worse, are no longer here, we, like Shi Taishang, will turn back to count those footprints. Shi Taishang later wrote that his mother didn't leave him with any grand sayings or lessons. Only after she passed did her difficult fate, steadfast spirit, and understated love gradually grow clearer and deeper in my memory as time passed. You see, love is a strange thing. It's the silent kind that often stands the test of time the best. And for those who matter most to us, we tend to assume they'll always be there. The third topic revolves around imperfection and completeness. Shi Taishang shared a remarkable insight. I often think that it's the ugly woman who perfects the beauty. I often think that it's the fool who highlights the sage. I often think that it's the coward who frames the hero. I often think that it's humanity that enlightens the Buddha. These lines read like poetry but carry profound philosophical weight. All meaning is born from contrast. Without imperfection, completeness wouldn't exist. Without darkness, light would lose its significance. This idea led Shi Taishang to a monumental shift in perspective. He stopped asking, why me, and began pondering a broader question. What people cannot do are their limits, their disabilities. What does this mean? Everyone has things they cannot do. Some may lack intelligence, beauty, or a good family background. From this angle, isn't everyone a disabled person in some way? Inability to walk is one form of imperfection, while emotional numbness, closed hearts, and loss of life's meaning are others. He followed this with an even more profound statement: the here and now will always be imperfect, otherwise, the beyond would collapse. What does this mean? It means that reality is inherently flawed, and it's precisely because of this imperfection that we aspire toward perfection. If everything were complete, then dreams, faith, and pursuits, the things that keep us alive, would have no reason to exist. So, you see, Shi Taishang's greatness lies not in his acceptance of his disability. Acceptance is just the first step. Many people achieve that. His true brilliance was in discovering a sense of necessity in his disability, understanding the dialectical relationship between imperfection and completeness. He wasn't merely enduring suffering, he was understanding suffering. He wasn't fighting fate, he was conversing with fate. This level of enlightenment, to be honest, is something even the physically capable may struggle to achieve. Now, let me share a few memorable quotes from the book. First, death is not something to rush toward. Death is an inevitable holiday. Comparing death to a holiday might initially sound eerie, but upon reflection, it feels astonishingly liberating. If death is certain, instead of fearing it, why not treat it as the final appointment in life, and enjoy the journey before reaching it? Second, some things are only fit for safekeeping. They cannot be spoken of, cannot be thought about, and yet cannot be forgotten. Many use this line to describe regret, love, or loss. Its charm lies in capturing a feeling we've all experienced but can't articulate. Some treasures are too precious to be reduced to mere words. They belong to two realms, the heart and the grave. Third, I often think that it's humanity that enlightens the Buddha. The scope of this idea is enormous, not the Buddha enlightening humanity, but humanity's suffering, struggles, and flaws that cultivate the Buddha's compassion. In life, it works the same way. Those who hurt you or the challenges you faced all shape the person you become today. In conclusion, I and the Temple of Earth superficially recounts the story of a disabled man and a ruined garden, but it truly addresses questions every individual must face. When fate pushes you into the depths, what should you do? Shi Taishang spent 15 years in that ancient garden and found his answers. Don't rush toward death because it will inevitably come. Don't cling to outcomes because the journey itself holds meaning. Don't resent imperfection because it's imperfection that makes us yearn for completeness. What makes Shi Taishang remarkable is how he experienced life's suffering but expressed it as clarity and joy in existence. He didn't become cynical or pessimistic. Sitting in his wheelchair, he watched ants and ladybugs, the changing seasons, and the people coming and going, and composed some of the most tender literary works in contemporary China. If you're currently facing difficulties, exam stress, romantic setbacks, or uncertainty about the future, I recommend reading this book. It won't offer specific solutions, but it will provide strength, a kind of strength that says, even suffering can be understood this way. Just like the abandoned garden in the Temple of Earth, walls may collapse, tiles may shatter, but the grass keeps growing, and the wind keeps blowing. As long as you're here, life continues. If today's content helped or touched you in any way, feel free to subscribe or share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know when in your life you suddenly understood the meaning of someone or something. Well, that's all for today's episode. No matter when you're listening, I wish you good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Delusion. See you next time.